When garbage collection goes Galactic, Maya Chun was having the kind of day that made her question her life choices, which was saying something since she cleaned up after 12 million people on New Tokyo Colony Station. The industrial waste recycling system had broken down again. The bio-waste processors were making that concerning humming noise, and someone had somehow managed to clog the zero-gravity disposal chutes with what appeared to be crystallized pasta. She'd been working for 16 hours straight. Her coveralls were stained with substances that probably violated several health codes, and all she wanted was to grab a coffee and file a complaint about the construction noise from Sector 7 that had been keeping her awake for 3 weeks. The complaint office was located in what the station directory optimistically called the Interspecies Relations Hub, which was really just a cramped room filled with translation computers and harried-looking aliens trying to process paperwork from dozens of different species. Maya had been there before. The food vendors outside were too loud, the construction crews worked at all hours, and nobody seemed to care that some people actually needed sleep between their shifts of keeping an entire space station from drowning in its own garbage. She walked up to the nearest available terminal, a sleek device that promised universal translation and form processing in over 50,000 galactic languages. Maya had always been impressed by these machines, even if they occasionally translated broken toilet as shattered throne of contemplation. She pressed the activation button and waited for the cheerful holographic interface to appear. Welcome to the Galactic Administrative Processing System, the hologram announced in perfectly accented English. Please state your occupation for proper form routing. Sanitation engineer. Maya said, stifling yawn. Waste Management Specialist, New Tokyo Colony Station. The translation system whirred and clicked for longer than usual. Maya noticed several alien officials nearby had stopped their conversations and were staring at her with expressions that ranged from confusion to what might have been excitement. She assumed it was because humans were still relatively rare in this part of the galaxy. Occupation confirmed. Waste Elimination Specialist, Combat Division, the system announced. Please proceed to Terminal 7 for tournament registration. Maya blinked. I'm sorry, what? I just want to file a noise complaint. Combat eligibility verified. Physical parameters within acceptable ranges for Crimson Arena participation. Registration fee waived due to exotic species status. Look, I think there's been some kind of mistake. Maya said, but the hologram had already disappeared, and the terminal was printing out what appeared to be official documents covered in symbols she didn't recognize that a tall, reptilian alien approached her. Wearing what looked like military dress uniform covered in medals and insignia, his scales were a deep purple color, and his eyes were the kind of yellow that suggested he'd seen things that would give most people nightmares. When he spoke, his voice had the quality of someone who is used to being obeyed without question. Greetings, warrior, he said, executing what Maya assumed was some kind of formal bow. I am Xerix the Conqueror, Grand Organizer of the Crimson Arena Tournament. We are honored by your participation. Maya looked down at her stained coveralls and then back at the imposing alien. I think you've got the wrong person. I'm just here to complain about construction noise. Xerix's expression shifted to something that might have been confusion, though it was hard to tell with the reptilian features. You are not here to compete in the galaxy's most prestigious combat tournament. Combat tournament? Maya repeated. No, definitely not. I clean garbage chutes for a living. I haven't been in a fight since middle school, and that was over whether pizza belonged on breakfast menus. Several other aliens had gathered around them now, and Maya was starting to feel like she was at the center of some kind of misunderstanding that was rapidly spiraling out of control. The crowd included what appeared to be a walking crystal formation, something that looked like a cross between a lion and a particularly aggressive houseplant, and a creature that seemed to be made entirely of shifting shadows with too many teeth. The registration system has confirmed your combat classification, Xerix said, consulting a handheld device that was displaying rapidly scrolling text. Waste Elimination Specialist, Combat Division. Your species designation is listed as Terran Human Subclass, Industrial Warrior. Maya rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. Okay, I think I see the problem. I eliminate waste as in garbage. Trash. Refuse. Not people. I manage waste disposal systems. The crystal creature made a sound like wind chimes being shaken by an earthquake. The plant lion thing released what smelled suspiciously like the scent of fear mixed with fertilizer. The shadow creature's teeth seemed to multiply. You eliminate refuse? Xerix asked carefully. That's right. Broken equipment, contaminated materials, hazardous bio-waste. It's actually pretty interesting work if you're into logistics and environmental systems. And you do this professionally for 8 years now. Started in the recycling division, worked my way up to waste management engineering. It's steady work, good benefits, and somebody has to do it. Xerix stared at her for a long moment, then looked at his device, then back at her. Miss, I apologize. What is your designation? Maya. Maya Chun. And look, I really just want to file a complaint about Miss Chun, Xerix interrupted. I'm afraid there's been a significant administrative error. However, the tournament registration is now locked into the system. The promotional materials have been distributed to 14 billion subscribers across the galaxy. The betting odds have been posted on 17 different worlds. Maya felt her headache getting worse. What exactly are you trying to tell me? You are officially registered as a contestant in the Crimson Arena tournament, which begins in 6 standard hours. And I can't just unregister? The Crimson Arena tournament, Xerix said with the air of someone reciting from memory, is a single-elimination combat competition featuring the galaxy's most dangerous predators. It has been held annually for the past 4 centuries. The current mortality rate is approximately 97%. Maya stared at him. 97% mortality rate? The survivors are typically those who forfeit before combat begins, though even that carries significant risk due to the enthusiasm of the audience. This is insane. I'm not a fighter. I'm a sanitation worker. I spend my days fixing broken garbage disposals and making sure hazardous waste doesn't leak into the water supply. The crystal creature made more wind chime noises, which a nearby translation device helpfully rendered as the human speaks of waste elimination with great passion. Truly a fearsome specialist. I'm not fearsome, Maya protested. I'm tired. I've been working double shifts for 3 months because half my crew got food poisoning from that new Altarian restaurant in Sector 12. You work with hazardous materials, the shadow creature observed, its voice like whispers echoing in an empty tomb. You speak of contamination and disposal. These are the skills of a master eliminator. These are the skills of someone who knows how to read a safety manual and follow proper procedures. Xerix was consulting his device again, his expression growing more troubled. Miss Chin, according to our research, humans are classified as a recently contacted species with unknown combat potential. Your registration has generated significant interest among our viewing audience. What kind of interest? The kind that has caused 3 different betting syndicates to offer me substantial sums for exclusive broadcast rights to your matches. Maya felt like she was in some kind of fever dream brought on by too much caffeine and too little sleep. This is ridiculous. Can't you just announce that there was a mistake? I'm afraid that would be problematic. The tournament has never had a competitor withdraw due to administrative error. It would set a precedent that could undermine the entire event. What happens if I just refuse to fight? The audience tends to view that unfavorably. Last time someone attempted to forfeit, they were, well, let's just say that the cleanup crew needed specialized equipment. Maya looked around at the assembled aliens, all of whom were watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed bloodlust. She realized that somewhere in this cosmic, bureaucratic nightmare, she had been transformed from a tired sanitation worker into some kind of gladiatorial entertainment. How long do these tournaments usually last? She asked, hoping for some small mercy. The record is 4 minutes and 17 seconds. That was set by Vordhak Prime, our current champion. He eliminated 6 opponents simultaneously using a technique that our commentators described as creatively brutal. And the longest, 12 minutes, 38 seconds. Though that was considered an unusually drawn-out affair. The audience complained afterward about the lack of decisive action. Maya considered her options. She could try to run, but she was on an alien space station surrounded by creatures that probably considered humans an exotic delicacy. She could try to explain the situation to the media, but her luck with alien bureaucracy suggested that would only make things worse. Or she could play along until she figured out a way to extract herself from this. Mess without getting eaten by the audience. What exactly do I need to do? She asked, surprising herself with the question. Xerix brightened considerably. Excellent. First, you'll need to report to the contestant preparation area for orientation and equipment assignment. Then there's a brief medical examination to ensure you're not carrying any diseases that might affect the other competitors. Finally, you'll be given time to prepare your battle strategy and make any final arrangements. Final arrangements, will and testament mostly, though, given your species' apparent unfamiliarity with galactic legal frameworks, we can provide a standard template. Maya rubbed her temples again. This is really happening, isn't it? I'm afraid so, though I should mention that the prize for winning the tournament is quite substantial, enough to purchase a small moon or a large space station. And if I lose, well, as I mentioned, the mortality rate is 97%, right? Maya sighed. Okay, fine. Where's this preparation area? As Xerix led her through the corridors of what she was beginning to realize was not just an administrative building, but some kind of massive entertainment complex, Maya couldn't help but notice the other competitors. They were uniformly large, heavily armed, and covered in what appeared to be scars from previous battles. Many of them had additional limbs, enhanced claws, or other biological modifications that suggested they took their combat careers very seriously. By contrast, Maya was wearing work coveralls that hadn't been washed in 3 days, steel-toed boots that had seen better decades, and a utility belt full of tools designed for fixing broken pipes rather than eliminating cosmic threats. Mr. Xerix, she said as they walked, just out of curiosity, what made the translation system think I was some kind of combat specialist? Well, your job title includes elimination and waste management. In many warrior cultures, waste elimination refers to the efficient disposal of enemies, and management implies strategic coordination of large-scale operations. And the fact that I work on a space station, environmental warfare, is considered an advanced tactical discipline. The ability to manipulate life support systems, atmospheric composition, and waste disposal networks suggests a sophisticated understanding of siege warfare. Maya was beginning to understand how this misunderstanding had occurred, though that didn't make her feel any better about her current situation. What about my appearance? Don't I look a little non-threatening? Xerix glanced at her coveralls and tool belt. Camouflage is often the mark of a truly dangerous operative. The fact that you appear to be an ordinary maintenance worker could be interpreted as an extremely sophisticated disguise. It's not a disguise. I really am an ordinary maintenance worker. That's exactly what a master infiltrator would say. Maya realized she was trapped in a logic loop that could only exist in a universe where bureaucratic incompetence operated on a galactic scale. As they approached the contestant preparation area, she could hear sounds that suggested large, aggressive creatures were already warming up for the tournament. She was about to ask Xerix about the possibility of filing an appeal when the doors opened, and she got her first look at what the galaxy considered its most dangerous predators. The sight was enough to make her forget all about construction noise complaints and broken garbage disposals. Sometimes, Maya reflected, the universe had a very strange sense of humor. Why didn't anyone mention this was a fighting thing? The contestant preparation area looked like what might happen if someone took a maximum security prison, crossed it with a veterinary hospital, and then decorated it with the aesthetic sensibilities of someone who thought spikes were the height of interior design. Maya found herself in a vast circular chamber with holding areas arranged around the perimeter, each one clearly designed to contain a different type of extremely dangerous alien. And the nearest enclosure, something that looked like a mechanical dragon, was sharpening claws the size of industrial cutting tools. Across the chamber, a creature that appeared to be made of living lava was practicing what could only be described as aggressive interpretive dance. Somewhere to her left, something was making sounds that the universal translator was rendering as creative threats to your molecular structure. Maya was given what Xerix cheerfully described as a standard competitor suite, which turned out to be a small room with reinforced walls, a bed that looked like it could survive orbital bombardment, and a waste disposal unit that was actually better maintained than the ones on her station. She found this both impressive and mildly insulting. The tournament begins in 4 hours, Xerix informed her. You'll face your first opponent in Arena 7. The opening ceremony starts in 30 minutes, followed by the preliminary matches. What exactly am I supposed to do during a preliminary match? Maya asked, hoping the answer might be something reasonable like fill out additional paperwork or attend a safety briefing. Survive, Xerix replied helpfully. Though tactics vary depending on your opponent's species, combat style, and preferred method of eliminating competitors, Maya sat down on the reinforced bed and tried to process her situation. Somewhere in the past few hours, she had gone from being a tired sanitation worker to a contestant in what was apparently the galaxy's deadliest sporting event. The rational part of her mind insisted this was all some kind of elaborate mistake that would be resolved before anyone actually expected her to fight something with more teeth than a dental textbook. The less rational part of her mind was pointing out that she had once spent 3 hours in a broken waste processing facility filled with toxic fumes and aggressive mechanical components, and had emerged with nothing worse than a mild headache and some interesting stories. Maybe the universe's assessment of her capabilities wasn't entirely wrong, that a soft chime indicated an incoming message on the room's communication system. A holographic display materialized, showing what appeared to be a news broadcast featuring her own face next to dramatic text in several alien languages. Breaking news from the Crimson Arena, the anchor announced, her voice carrying the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for natural disasters and celebrity scandals. Tournament officials have confirmed the participation of a mysterious human contestant, marking the first time a Terran has entered galactic combat competition. The display showed footage of Maya walking through the preparation area, looking confused and slightly annoyed. The commentator continued her breathless coverage. Early reports described the human as a waste elimination specialist with extensive experience in environmental warfare and hazardous material disposal. Military analysts suggest that Earth's recent contact with galactic civilization may have been part of a broader reconnaissance operation. Maya stared at the screen in growing horror as the broadcast continued with expert commentary from various aliens who were enthusiastically speculating about human combat capabilities based on absolutely no actual information. The betting odds have shifted dramatically, the anchor announced. Initial projections gave the human competitor a 0.01% chance of survival, but early money from sources in the Outer Rim has pushed those odds to nearly 3%. 3%, Maya thought. She wasn't sure if she should be insulted or relieved. Another chime indicated it was time for the opening ceremony. Maya made her way to the staging area, where she found herself lined up with creatures that belonged in nightmares rather than sporting events. The alien next to her appeared to be some kind of bipedal shark with additional arms and an attitude problem. On her other side stood something that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by someone with a very creative understanding of anatomy. First time, the shark thing asked, its voice carrying the wet, threatening quality of someone who enjoyed their work too much. Yeah, Maya replied. You. 17th tournament. Still haven't won, but I've made it to the semifinals twice. The creature gestured with one of its multiple arms. Name's Bloodfong the Terrible. What's your kill count? Maya considered the question. Well, I eliminated about 47 broken waste processors last month, if that counts. Bloodfang's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. 47 in 1 month? That's impressive efficiency. What's your preferred method? Usually I start with diagnostic scans to identify the core problem, then I isolate the faulty components and replace them with properly calibrated alternatives. Methodical. I like that. Too many fighters today rely on brute force instead of proper technique. Maya was beginning to realize that this conversation was heading in a direction that might cause problems later. What about you? What's your approach? Psychological warfare combined with precise anatomical targeting. I like to study my opponents beforehand, identify their weak points, then systematically exploit them until they lose the will to continue. That sounds thorough. It's all about understanding systems and how they fail. Whether it's a living organism or a mechanical device, everything is breaking points. Maya nodded thoughtfully. That's actually pretty similar to maintenance work. You have to understand how systems are supposed to function before you can figure out why they're not working. The opening ceremony turned out to be a spectacular display of pyrotechnics, holographic projections, and what appeared to be interpretive violence performed by previous tournament winners. Maya found herself introduced as the mysterious human waste elimination specialist representing the recently contacted world of Earth. The audience, which filled a stadium large enough to house a small city, responded with a mixture of curiosity and bloodlust that Maya found deeply unsettling. She waved awkwardly when prompted, which caused several commentators to speculate about the meaning of her ritual gesture of acknowledgement. Her first match was scheduled 40 minutes after the ceremony concluded. Maya spent the intervening time trying to understand exactly what she was supposed to do when faced with an opponent whose entire life had been dedicated to eliminating other living beings in creative and entertaining ways. Arena 7 turned out to be a circular combat zone surrounded by energy barriers and filled with environmental hazards that seemed designed to make the fighting more interesting for spectators. Gravity fields, energy dischargers, and what appeared to be mechanical obstacles that moved randomly throughout the space created a battlefield that was part gladiatorial ring and part industrial accident waiting to happen to Maya's opponent was announced as Rage Scale, the Bone Crusher, veteran of 34 death matches and proud holder of the Galactic record for most creative use of an opponent's ribcage. Rage Scale turned out to be a 12-foot-tall reptilian creature covered in natural armor plating, and equipped with claws that could apparently cut through starship hull material. He entered the arena with the kind of confident swagger that suggested he had never encountered a problem that couldn't be solved through the application of overwhelming violence. The referee, safely protected behind energy barriers, announced the rules. Single elimination combat. No weapons except natural abilities. Contest ends when one competitor is unable to continue. Medical teams are standing by. Maya looked around the arena, taking in the various hazards and obstacles. Her maintenance training automatically began cataloging safety violations and environmental risks. The gravity field generators were operating outside normal parameters, the energy discharge points lacked proper warning signs, and several of the mechanical obstacles appeared to have sharp edges that could cause serious injury. This whole setup is a lawsuit waiting to happen, she muttered. Rage Scale had been performing some kind of intimidation ritual involving roaring and claw sharpening, but he stopped when he heard Maya's comment. What did you say, human? I said this arena has serious safety issues. Those gravity field generators are fluctuating outside acceptable ranges, and I don't see any emergency shutdown systems. If someone gets caught in a feedback loop, there's no way to extract them safely. Rage Scale stared at her for a moment, his expression cycling through confusion, irritation, and what might have been concern. You're worried about safety protocols? Someone could get seriously hurt. Look at those energy discharge points. They're not properly grounded, and the warning indicators are completely inadequate. And don't get me started on the mechanical obstacles. Half of them have exposed sharp edges that violate basic industrial safety standards. The referee's voice crackled over the arena's communication system. Contestants, prepare for combat initiation. Rage Scale shook his head as if trying to clear it, then resumed his intimidating posture. Prepare to be eliminated human waste specialist. Wait, Maya said, holding up a hand. Before we do whatever this is, can I ask you something? Are you feeling all right? You look a little unsteady. Rage Scale blinked, momentarily thrown off his rhythm. What? You've been favoring your left side since you entered the arena, and I notice you're breathing irregularly. Are you experiencing any chest pain or dizziness? What are you talking about? Maya stepped closer, her expression shifting to one of genuine concern. Look, I'm not a medical professional, but I've seen enough people working in hazardous environments to recognize the signs of respiratory distress. When was the last time you had your atmospheric filters checked? My what? Your atmospheric filters. If you're from a high-oxygen world and you're trying to fight in a standard atmosphere, you could be experiencing hypoxic stress. That would explain the irregular breathing and the balance problems. Rage Scale was now staring at her with an expression of complete bewilderment. Are you trying to help me? Well, yeah. I mean, this whole fighting thing seems pretty dangerous already without adding environmental health hazards. The arena had fallen completely silent. Maya could see spectators leaning forward in their seats, apparently confused by the lack of immediate violence. The commentators seemed to be having some kind of technical difficulty, as their usual play-by-play had devolved into stammering uncertainty. Human, Rage Scale said carefully, "We are supposed to be fighting to the death." Why? Because that's what the tournament is for. But you're obviously not feeling well. Wouldn't it make more sense to get you some medical attention first? I mean, what's the point of fighting if you're already compromised? Rage Scale sat down heavily on the arena floor, his massive frame settling with a sound like a small building being demolished. You know what? You're right. I have been feeling off lately, and my atmospheric filters are about 6 months overdue for replacement. Maya nodded sympathetically. Maintenance schedules are important. People don't realize how much their performance suffers when their equipment isn't properly maintained. I forfeit, Rage Scale announced, his voice carrying clearly across the silent arena. The human is right. I need medical attention. The referee's voice crackled with confusion. Winner by forfeit, Maya Chin of Earth. As medical teams rushed in to assist Rage Scale, Maya waved to the stunned audience and made her way back to the preparation area. She had somehow won her first match without throwing a punch, and she was pretty sure that wasn't how these tournaments were supposed to work. Bloodfong the Terrible was waiting for her when she returned. That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, he said, his voice filled with what sounded suspiciously like admiration. What? Helping someone recognize that they needed medical attention? You defeated Rage Scale the Bone Crusher through psychological warfare, so subtle that he didn't even realize he was being attacked. That was masterful. Maya was beginning to realize that her fellow competitors were interpreting her actions in ways that bore no resemblance to her actual intentions. I wasn't attacking anyone. I was genuinely concerned about his health. Of course you were. Bloodfong replied with what might have been a wink. The perfect cover story. As Maya prepared for her second match, she couldn't help but notice that the other competitors were now watching her with expressions that ranged from respectful wariness to outright fear. Somehow, her attempt to be helpful had been transformed into evidence of her dangerous cunning. She was starting to understand why this tournament had such a high mortality rate. It wasn't just the violence. It was the complete inability of anyone involved to communicate clearly about what was actually happening. Maybe you should invite actual athletes next time Maya's second opponent was introduced as the Void Stalker, master of the dimensional hunt, consumer of reality's edge, which Maya had to admit sounded significantly more intimidating than Maya Chun, sanitation engineer, consumer of vending machine coffee. The Void Stalker appeared to be made of living darkness with occasional glimpses of what might have been stars or possibly eyes scattered throughout its shifting form. It moved like liquid shadow, given malevolent purpose, and when it spoke, reality seemed to bend slightly around the words. Human, It said, its voice echoing from directions that shouldn't have existed. I have hunted across 17 dimensions. I have stalked prey through the spaces between thoughts. Your species is unknown to me, but your fear will taste familiar. Maya squinted at the shifting darkness, her practical mind automatically trying to categorize what she was looking at. Are you some kind of energy being? Because if so, you should really be careful around the arena's power systems. I noticed they're running at higher than normal output, and energy-based life forms can experience some pretty serious feedback effects. The Void Stalker paused in what had been an impressive display of reality-warping intimidation. Feedback effects. Yeah, electromagnetic interference, harmonic resonance, that sort of thing. I've seen it happen with plasma-based equipment. 1 minute, everything's working fine. The next minute, you've got energy cascades that can damage your core systems. My core systems, Maya gestured toward the arena's energy discharge points, which were crackling with poorly regulated power. Those things are putting out some seriously unstable energy signatures. If you're made of organized energy patterns, you could be at risk for pattern disruption or worse. The Void Stalker's form flickered, and Maya could swear she saw something like uncertainty in the way the darkness moved. You can perceive energy patterns? Well, sort of. I mean, I work with power systems all the time. You learn to recognize when things are operating outside normal parameters. Maya pulled out her standard maintenance scanner and pointed it in the Void Stalker's direction. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're definitely experiencing some kind of interference. Your energy coherence is fluctuating like crazy. The scanner beeped helpfully, displaying readings that Maya interpreted as concerning and the Void Stalker apparently interpreted as terrifying. You can measure my dimensional essence? The creature whispered, its voice now carrying notes of what sounded suspiciously like panic. I can measure energy patterns, if that's what you mean. And honestly, yours don't look great. When was the last time you had a proper system diagnostic? A system diagnostic? To check for pattern degradation, energy leaks, harmonic instabilities. Basic maintenance stuff. The Void Stalker's form began to contract, pulling in on itself like a star collapsing into a black hole. I haven't had a diagnostic in 3,000 years. Maya's eyebrows shot up. 3,000 years? No wonder you're having coherence problems. You need immediate attention from someone who specializes in energy-based life forms. This tournament can wait. But the hunt can wait until you're not at risk of spontaneous pattern collapse. Trust me, I've seen what happens when energy systems fail catastrophically. It's not pretty. The referee's voice crackled over the arena's communication system, though it now carried a note of weary resignation that suggested the officials were beginning to expect unusual developments. Contestants, you have been allocated combat time. Please commence whatever it is you're doing. Maya looked up at the referee booth. We're going to need a medical team with energy being specialists. This competitor needs immediate diagnostic assessment. The Void Stalker made a sound like reality sobbing. She's right. I can feel the pattern degradation now that she's pointed it out. How did I not notice? System problems can be subtle until someone points them out, Maya said sympathetically. That's why regular maintenance is so important. I forfeit, the Void Stalker announced, its voice now barely a whisper across dimensions. The human has shown me that I require technical support. As the medical teams rushed in with equipment Maya didn't recognize, but which seemed appropriate for treating sentient energy phenomena, she found herself advancing to the next round through what was becoming a pattern of unintentional helpfulness. The third match brought her face-to-face with Razor Queen, mistress of 1,000 blades, sculptor of suffering. The Razor Queen appeared to be a humanoid creature whose body was covered in naturally occurring blade-like protrusions that gleamed with what looked like molecular sharpness. She moved with lethal grace, each step seeming to cut small grooves in the arena floor. Human, the Razor Queen announced, her voice carrying the sound of metal being sharpened, I have perfected the art of death through precision. Each of my blades has tasted the life essence of a dozen opponents. Maya looked at the queen's blade-covered form with growing concern. Oh my God, are you okay? You're bleeding everywhere. The Razor Queen paused mid-intimidation. I'm not bleeding. These are my natural weapons. But look at all those cuts and lacerations. You must be in incredible pain. Maya stepped closer, her maintenance worker instincts kicking in. Those blade protrusions are cutting into your own tissue. Don't you have any protective coating or sheathing mechanism? They're supposed to be sharp, the Razor Queen explained, though her voice now carried note of uncertainty. Sharp is one thing, but they're causing continuous tissue damage to your own body. That can't be healthy. Maya pulled out her scanner again. Let me check your infection risk levels. The scanner beeped alarmingly. Okay, this is really bad. You've got bacterial contamination, tissue inflammation, and what looks like the early stages of septic shock. How are you even standing up? The Razor Queen looked down at herself, as if seeing her blade-covered body for the first time. I always assumed the pain was normal. This level of self-inflicted tissue damage is definitely not normal. You need immediate medical attention, antibiotics, and probably some kind of protective barrier system between your blades and your soft tissue. But I've been training like this for decades. And you've probably been fighting infections and dealing with chronic pain for decades too. No wonder you're called the Razor Queen. You've been torturing yourself this whole time. The queen sat down heavily, her blades scraping against the arena floor. You know what? You're absolutely right. I hurt all the time. I just thought that was part of being a warrior. Pain is your body's way of telling you something is wrong. And in your case, what's wrong is that your natural weapons need better integration with your physiological systems. I forfeit, the Razor Queen announced, tears mixing with what Maya now realized was indeed blood from countless small cuts. I need to see a biomedical engineer about redesigning my weapon integration systems. As the medical teams rushed in for the third time, Maya heard one of the commentators saying something about unprecedented psychological warfare techniques and the human's ability to identify and exploit fundamental design flaws in opponent biology. Maya was beginning to realize that her fellow competitors had somehow managed to survive in the galaxy's deadliest tournament despite having serious, unaddressed health and safety issues. It was like discovering that the galaxy's most feared warriors had been fighting with faulty equipment and no proper maintenance protocols. Her fourth match was against someone called Nightmare Fuel, the Dream Eater, Master of Terror incarnate. Nightmare Fuel turned out to be a writhing mass of tentacles, eyes, and teeth that seemed designed by a committee of things that lived under beds and specialized in ruining people's sleep. Mortal, Nightmare Fuel burbled through multiple mouths. I shall feast upon your deepest fears and leave you a hollow shell of broken sanity. Maya looked at the creature with the same expression she used when examining particularly problematic waste disposal units. Have you considered that your appearance might be a symptom of an underlying health condition? Every eye on Nightmare Fuel's body turned to stare at her. What? Well, that kind of chaotic morphology usually indicates either genetic instability or some kind of parasitic infestation. Either way, it's probably treatable with the right medical intervention. I am the embodiment of primal terror. You're the embodiment of what looks like a serious medical condition. When did you last have a comprehensive physical examination? Nightmare Fuel's tentacles writhed in what might have been confusion. What's a physical examination? Oh, honey, no. You've been walking around with what appears to be uncontrolled cellular mutation, and you've never seen a doctor? Maya's scanner was practically having a seizure trying to process Nightmare Fuel's biological readings. Okay, this is definitely above my pay grade, but you've got genetic markers that suggest you might be dealing with some kind of retroviral infection that's causing random tissue generation. But I'm supposed to be terrifying. You're supposed to be healthy. The terrifying thing can wait until we make sure you're not dealing with a potentially fatal medical condition. 20 minutes later, Nightmare Fuel was being wheeled away on a medical transport, calling out, "Gratefully, thank you for caring about my health, human friend." Maya's fifth opponent was Bloodfong the Terrible, who had apparently made it through his own matches, using what the commentators were calling traditional combat methods, which seemed to involve a lot more actual fighting than Maya had been doing. Well, Bloodfong said as they faced each other in the arena, "I have to admit, I'm curious to see how you handle someone who's not having a medical crisis. Are you sure you're not having a medical crisis?" Maya asked, "Because now that I think about it, that whole terrible thing might be masking some underlying self-esteem issues." Bloodfong laughed, a sound like a chainsaw learning to appreciate comedy. "You know what? You're probably right, but I've been looking forward to this match, and I promise I'm in perfect health." "Okay," Maya said, "but just so you know, I still don't really understand what we're supposed to be doing here. We fight until one of us can't continue." "But why?" Bloodfong paused in his combat stance. "Because it's a tournament." "But what's the point of the tournament?" "To determine who's the strongest warrior in the galaxy. But I'm not a warrior. I fix garbage disposals." "Yes, but you've defeated 4 opponents without breaking a sweat. I helped 4 people realize they had health problems. That's not the same thing as defeating them." Bloodfong considered this. When you put it that way, this whole tournament seems kind of pointless. Right? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to have some kind of wellness check program for professional fighters? Make sure everyone's operating at peak condition before asking them to compete? That actually sounds like a really good idea. "I forfeit," Bloodfong announced suddenly. "What? Why?" "Because you've convinced me that this tournament is fundamentally flawed as a measure of combat effectiveness. I'm going to petition the organizers to implement comprehensive health screening for all future participants." As Maya advanced to the finals through her 5th forfeit, she couldn't help but notice that the crowd was starting to sound less bloodthirsty and more confused. The commentators seemed to be having some kind of existential crisis about the nature of competitive combat. Her final opponent was Vorthak Prime, the defending champion and the creature who held the record for fastest. Tournament completion. Vorthak was a crystalline being who looked like someone had taken a geometric theorem and given it the ability to end civilizations. Human Vorthak said, his voice like the sound of mathematics being angry, "You have confused and demoralized 5 of my fellow competitors through methods I do not understand. This will not work on me." "Okay," Maya said, "but before we start, can I ask you something?" "Speak. Why do you want to fight me?" Vorthak's crystalline form shimmered. "Because I am the champion. It is what I do." "But do you enjoy it?" "Enjoy it?" "Yeah. Do you have fun fighting? Does it make you happy? Do you feel fulfilled by your career as a professional combat athlete?" Vorthak was silent for a long moment. I have never considered these questions. Because from an outside perspective, it seems like you're all really stressed out and unhappy. I mean, everyone I've talked to today has had serious health problems or personal issues that they've been ignoring because they're so focused on fighting. This is not how champions are supposed to think. Says who? I mean, if you're the best at what you do, shouldn't you at least enjoy doing it? Vorthak's crystalline structure began to shift, taking on new, geometric configurations that somehow conveyed deep thought. "Human, in my 300 years of competition, no one has ever asked me if I was happy." "Well, are you?" "No," Vorthak admitted. "I am not happy. I am the most successful warrior in galactic history, and I have never experienced a moment of genuine satisfaction." Maya nodded sympathetically. "That sounds awful. Have you considered career counseling?" "Career counseling?" "Yeah, maybe exploring some other options. I mean, you're obviously really good at organizing and precision work. There are lots of careers that use those skills without all the violence and stress." Vorthak stood motionless for several minutes, his form cycling through what appeared to be every geometric shape known to mathematics. Finally, he spoke. "I forfeit this match and resign my championship. Human Maya-chun, you have defeated me more thoroughly than any opponent in my career, not through combat, but by asking me to consider whether my life has meaning." As the arena fell completely silent, Maya looked around at the stunned crowd and the bewildered officials. "So, does this mean I win the tournament?" The referee's voice crackled weakly over the communication system. Ah, yes. By process of elimination, Maya Chin of Earth is declared the winner of the Crimson Arena Tournament. The crowd's response was unlike anything in tournament history. Instead of bloodthirsty cheers, there was a strange mixture of confused applause, thoughtful murmuring, and what sounded like several existential crises happening simultaneously. Admiral Xerix materialized as a hologram in the center of the arena, his expression suggesting he was having some kind of spiritual awakening. Miss Chun, in the 400-year history of this tournament, no competitor has ever won by helping their opponents realize they needed therapy. I still don't understand why everyone wanted to fight in the first place, Maya replied. I mean, wouldn't it be more fun to have, like, a problem-solving competition? Or maybe a collaborative engineering challenge? The crowd was now actively discussing among themselves, and Maya could hear fragments of conversation about alternative tournament formats and the benefits of comprehensive health care for combat athletes. Miss Chin, Xerix continued, you have fundamentally altered our understanding of competition, conflict resolution, and the importance of participant well-being. The Galactic Tournament Authority would like to offer you a position as Director of Competitor Wellness and Alternative Competition Formats. That sounds nice, Maya said, but I've got a job. The waste recycling systems on New Tokyo Colony aren't going to maintain themselves. We would be willing to offer you a salary that could fund the maintenance of an entire planet's waste management infrastructure. Maya considered this. Would I get to implement proper safety protocols? Whatever safety protocols you deem necessary, and establish regular health screening programs for all participants. Absolutely. And maybe set up some kind of counseling services for people who are dealing with career-related stress. We'll create an entire department if you want. Maya nodded thoughtfully. Okay, that actually sounds like it might be more interesting than fixing garbage disposals, but I'll need 2 weeks' notice to train my replacement. As Maya left the arena, she couldn't help but notice that several of her former opponents were already deep in conversation with what appeared to be career counselors and medical specialists. Blood Fong was apparently very interested in a degree program for sports psychology, and the Razor Queen was discussing biomedical engineering options with someone who specialized in integrating natural weapons with living tissue. 6 months later, the former Crimson Arena tournament had been transformed into the Galactic Wellness and Problem-Solving Championship, featuring events like collaborative engineering challenges, therapeutic communication workshops, and advanced safety protocol implementation. The mortality rate had dropped to 0%, and participant satisfaction surveys showed unprecedented levels of happiness and personal fulfillment. Maya received regular updates from her former competitors, most of whom had discovered that they were much happier when they weren't trying to kill each other for entertainment. Vordhack Prime had started a successful career as a geometric consultant, Nightmare Fuel had gotten treatment for his condition, and was now working as a special effects designer, and the Razor Queen had revolutionized the field of precision manufacturing. Maya herself had returned to New Tokyo Colony Station, where she now split her time between maintaining waste disposal systems and serving as a remote consultant for Galactic Tournament safety protocols. She had also successfully filed her original noise complaint, which had resulted in new construction regulations that were being adopted across 3 star systems. Sometimes, she reflected, the universe really did have a sense of humor. Though, in her experience, it was usually the kind of humor that involved bureaucratic mix-ups and people taking their jobs way too seriously. The galaxy, for its part, had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of asking simple questions like, are you happy? And have you considered seeing a doctor about that? It turned out that most problems, even cosmic-scale ones, could be solved with a little practical common sense and genuine concern for people's well-being. And somewhere in the depths of space, a new generation of tournament organizers was learning that the most dangerous opponent of all was someone who actually cared about whether everyone was okay.